The information provided on Dr. Tom Roselle Live by Dr. Tom Roselle, D.C., interview guests, show co-hosts, or substitute hosts is not intended or implied to be a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. It is for general information purposes only. Information from this broadcast should not replace the appropriate consultation and examination process by a licensed physician. Always consult your own physician prior to changing any current medical directive or prescription.
Hey everybody, welcome to Asia's Health Livestream with yours truly, Dr. Tom Roselle. Glad you're here with me. We're going to get into a little kind of different tweaks. You know, we always talk about the structural, which means neurological, and biochemical, which means anything outside your body that affects your body inside. And then we talk about the emotional platform. Well, the next while, we're going to start focusing on that last side of the triad and really how it affects you. So what are we talking about? We're going to talk about stress. And, you know, we all hear the conversation, stress kills. Well, it really does. And I want you to know how that happens. But we're going to lead into a really interesting presentation coming up on about the 18th of June. And it's called, you know, addressing stress, anxiety, and depression with your diet. Well, it means biochemical. So we're going to have a very special program, and Annabeth and Mary Jane, our two nutritionists in the office, will be there, and they're going to give you real specific things on how this stress pattern can be modified, eliminated when it comes to, you know, your health. Stress can kill. Because why? Because it can cause cardiovascular disease, it can cause diabetes, it can cause cancers, it can cause your body just to break down. You can go into that's not me type of syndrome. Your blood sugars, you know, and your cholesterols, you go through the ceiling, all because of stress. Your blood pressure just gets unrelenting high. You know, you internalize everything. So let's start in that piece. But we're going to talk about stressed out, headed for burnout on today's program. As we were picking it up on WMAL 105.9 just a few minutes ago. And all these are repeatable. So tell your friends about these programs. You can go to drtomroselle.com and pick up any of them. You go to the top of the toolbar on it, and you're going to see something that says podcast, and that's the radio program. And you're going to see something that says live stream, and that's these programs that we're doing right now that you're listening to. So, and we're on all social media sites. If you'd like to know when we're going to do something, simply go to drtomroselle.com and fill out that little, it's like a card that pops up right in front of you. And you don't have to do it, but I encourage you to do it because we're going to give you as much data as we possibly can. All right, let's get into the meat of this thing. Let's talk about, you know, stress patterns and really what happens and how your body begins to crash, if you will, as a result of, you know, you're headed into a major crisis, if you will, in your life, in your situation. So prolonged stress, you know, is different than depression, if you will. But burnout, going into a long stress period of time, that means that your body's biochemistry is going to drop. And what happens? You start getting depressed. What happens? You start getting anxious. What happens? You're short-tempered. And your whole persona, everything is beginning to change, and you know, it's not who you really are. But there's telltale signs that we all ignore. I'm probably one of the worst culprits because I constantly go. I'm on the go all the time. And when I get to that place where enough is enough already, my wife looks at me. She says, "Don't you think it's time for you to kind of, you know, go chill, go do something?" You have to have a safety valve to be able to put the fire out. But when you have that unrelenting exhaustion, that energy depletion, you even go in a mental place where you're a cynic all the time. That cynicism, that negativity, that mental push away from the things that you like to do, your job even. You know, you're an accountable person. You go in, you get things done the way you're supposed to, but you don't really want to do it anymore. You're not as effective. You're not as efficient as you used to be. Those are all signs that your body's going down the tubes, but often it's a result of the wrong fuel that's going in your system. You know, having said that, there's an argument that our understanding of somebody going down the tubes, burnout, if you will, shouldn't be limited to just what happens around the workplace. It can be on an ongoing situation. It could be that you have obligations. You're a caregiver for an elderly patient. You're you're in an academic situation and you're working at the same time. You have children that you're having to deal with. And in today's world, I don't know if I could raise my children again. I have grandchildren, and they're my oldest is in college. I got two of them are in college actually, and I got another one that's getting ready to go, and two others that are coming up. And I look at my son, I look at my daughter, and say, God bless you, because I don't know if I could deal with all the stuff that you're dealing with. But the common signs, we have all these things going on. Maybe you had a divorce. Maybe somebody died in your family. Maybe you're financially in a real ugly place because you haven't planned properly. All of those things can be modified if your headspace is working the way it's supposed to. So we're going to touch upon this, but we're going to do it from a biochemical platform. There's other things that you need to know about, and we're going to cover that on the 18th. So I'd encourage you, join me and Annabeth and Mary Jane, and we're going to really get into the meat of this thing and show you what you can do to at least get the stanchions, that underlying support system, to be more stable so you don't fall, because we have to live, right? We have to deal with our work. But wouldn't it be nice to be able to have the ability to get through the weeds without crashing? So when we see that we're exhausted all the time, no matter how much we sleep, that exhaustion pattern is often recognized as the core symptom of burnout, of falling apart, of not having it anymore. So pay attention to it. You go to the doc and he does blood work and he says, there's nothing wrong with you. Well, you come to me, I look at blood work a little differently. In our practice, what we do is we kind of do ratios, we pick it apart, but we always take into consideration what the patient, you, is telling us. So that exhaustion symptom that you just can't get over with, you go on vacation and the last 2-3 days of vacation, you start feeling better, and then you come back into it and you crash again. That's one of the primary symptoms of burnout. When you have that inside feeling of dread, oh my God type of thing, what's going to happen next? That's a symptom of burnout. And it can be mental exhaustion. It can be biochemical imbalances, because when we get into the biochemical piece, and particularly when we talk about it on the 18th in-house here at the Roselle Center in Fairfax, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be showing you when your dietary patterns are limited, or they're toxic, or they're not balanced, what happens to you and how your body begins to disrupt itself, if you will. So, that sense of dread or demotivation. You don't want to do anything. By the way, when you don't want to do anything, there's a neurochemistry that's involved in that. It's called a neurotransmitter. It's called dopamine. Dopamine is your feel-good juice. It's the one that basically wants, it gets the desire to go and to do. Without dopamine, you're not going to go do anything. You're not going to be excited about anything. You're going to look at your mate and say, yeah, I really don't care anymore. That's dopamine. And it's not because sometimes you've grown apart. It's because your motivation's gone down the toilet. And we're going to talk about that on a biochemical piece. How about, you used to be really good at focus and centrally keeping your headspace straight in front of you. And when you're on target, you're doing it, you're getting it done. Well, now your mind wanders. You're so ADD, you said, that's not like me. What happened to me? And so it makes focus a very difficult task, where you could sit and you could read for a couple hours at a time with a little bit of a break, sipping some water or having your cup of whatever you like. But now it's like every 15 minutes your head's off someplace else. You're having to use your finger to pace to keep yourself on track. That is a sign of what we're talking about. That's a stress-related condition that could be biochemically triggered. That means all the crap. You've heard me say a lot of times, over and over and over again, that the food in this country is toxic for the most part. And it's supported by the fact that the Europeans will not accept our food there. Why? Because they know it's a chemistry set. And when that chemistry set goes in your body and the amount of drugs that we're taking, goes in your system, it shifts the biochemical platform. It makes you do things that you normally wouldn't do. It makes you think aberrantly. It makes your organ system misfire. All signs of stress related situations. How about, patients come in and I ask them, I said, how's your sleeping cycle? They said, what do you mean? They said, do you sleep through the night? And they said, not really. And so burnout can also cause sleep problems, but the burnout that we're talking about is biochemical imbalance. So if you're having all of these problems, we've only gone through a couple of them right now. There's several more. When you look at your dietary patterns, and you used to eat pretty good, but all of a sudden now you're skipping meals. All of a sudden now you don't have appetite anymore. All of a sudden, you're eating mindlessly. I mean, that means you're catching. I get a good candy bar and a soda to keep me going, or a cup of coffee and a donut, and I'll get through the afternoon. A lot of you are sitting there laughing, but do you know how many people do that on a day-to-day basis? It's interesting. According to a study that I just looked at, the frequent consumption of healthy foods, like vegetables and nuts and good meats and are, they're associated with lower levels of stress patterns. That means your biochemistry is important to how your mind and your capacity and your ability to move forward works. Once you like to know how to handle that, well, join me on the 18th of June, and we're going to make sure that you have all the tools that you need to be able to reverse this thing, and you know what to look for. And it's not just, oh my God, I'm just getting older. Last night, we did a program at the Roselle Center on blood sugar problems. It was called, the Dr. Scott Lamp and I did it together, and it's still, the number one problem that we've always dealt with for years and years, but in a way that we brought it to light and showed how the diabetic neuropathies and the cardiovascular problems and the mental degeneration, all of those things had issues. But where did they come from? And we showed the correlation, the relationship. But according to a survey, 19% of all Americans experience a triggering mechanism from the crashing of blood sugars. And what are we talking about? We're talking about irritability and cynicism. That just everything is empty. There's nothing left. And, nobody's saying anything the right way. And how dare that person do whatever it is? And then how about if you get to that place where, you feel that you're not significant anymore? You feel useless. You don't have the ability to get things done. Your work goes down the toilet. You say, I guess I'm too old for this, or, life is passing me by. That can be a biochemical problem. And then we go into the depression, we go into the anxiety, and even headaches, and even intestinal tract pain. And then, we try to find other things to make us happy, even turning to others. There's a lot of people who end up having other relationships in their lives because they think that that's going to make them feel better when it's a biochemical imbalance that's taking place. What happens if you could fix it, right? And maybe a relationship, an extramarital affair. It could be alcohol that you're going to turn to. Could be comfort foods, all those cupcakes and pizzas and ice cream cones and so forth. And, maybe we'll go in to do things overexertedly. We'll do too much exercise because we figure that's going to get it done for us. Initially, when we exercise hard, we increase the production of serotonin and dopamine, and it makes us feel better. But here's the other piece. How many of you have eyesight that is changing? Your vision becomes blurred. Your eyes are dry. You've been accused of by the optometrist that you have eye strain, or you start getting twitching of your eyelids like this all the time. You're sensitive to the light. All of a sudden you get tunnel vision. How about your eyes are always damp and wet? Those are major signs that your body is crashing due to biochemical stresses within the system. And that's the piece we're going to talk. Now, obviously, there's other pieces of the puzzle when you're talking about stress patterns, but we're going to talk about the biochemical piece as we go through, because I really want you to get it. I want you to understand, and we'll touch upon some of the other signs and symptoms and so forth. But When you have extreme exhaustion, when you're feeling down and depressed, when your performance isn't doing what it's supposed to, those are signals, my friend. Those are things. When those things hit me, I said, "Oh, I'm in trouble. It's time to pull the plug a little bit. It's time to disconnect." Everybody says that you have to have life balance, but sometimes that life balance is simply making sure that you're getting the right chemistry on a regular basis. Right chemistry? What am I talking about? I'm talking about drugs? No, I'm not talking about drugs. I'm talking about food that you put into your system. That's the correct chemistry. Those are the things that you want to have available to you. That's what makes the car run the right way without sputtering, without breaking down, and so forth. So if you want to know how to handle that, then join us in June on the 18th, 6 p.m. at the Roselle Center in Fairfax. Last night somebody asked me, why don't you record those programs? Because we want to do show and tell demonstrations. We want to have the ability to answer your questions. We do these programs, they're all recorded here on live stream, and they're all recorded on the radio program, and those are available to you. So you can go back and refer to those all the time. But we want to give you hands-on experience. And when you do come to those classes, we're going to give you different opportunities to be able to fix these things and show you what is possible. But more importantly, you really need to know. So on the 18th, Annabeth and Mary Jane, our two nutritionists in our program, will give you a ton of information. Probably make you a little uncomfortable because they're going to say, you should be eating this, and you say, I hate that stuff, and it goes on and on. But when somebody comes in and they have serious depression, or their emotions are off the wall, they're bouncing all over the place, they're up and down like a yo-yo, they can't focus anymore. They're irritable, they're snapping, they're biting at people. They never have enough energy, no matter how long they sleep, if they can sleep. All of that can be a result of stress that is due to biochemical imbalances, or even though that you're eating well, you may not be getting enough of the things that you need to be getting. And there's a way of walking through that. Ladies, guys, how about hormones? All of a sudden, there's no desire to perform anything. You have an amazing, partner, wife, husband with you, and you don't look at them like you used to look at them. It's not because you're growing apart. It's because your chemistry has shifted because of a lot of things. Now, imbalances can also come from trauma and injury and blows and things like that are embedded. Those are injuries that your nervous system is remembering. And it also can come from ongoing, constant stress patterns, which we're touching upon, but also the biochemical. So this is truly a structural, chemical, emotional platform that intimately integrates to a place where you're burning the chemistry out, the neurotransmitters, the amino acids, the things that make you who you used to be. And I want you to have the opportunity to bring that back and put it all together. So join us, and we're going to make that happen. Now, look, when you're doing that, do you take a break when things are over the top? You have a problem with an employee, you have a problem with a coworker, you have a problem with a supervisor. Do do these things trigger you? How about if you're stressed and you're having to deal with all kinds of conflict around you, and how about ambiguity? You really, it's like, oh, someday I'll, or I'm not sure, or any of those things, right? That's a stress pattern. A decision is a decision. Whether you don't make a decision, that by itself is a decision. Did you hear what I just said? Any choice that you make, even not to make a choice, is a decision. It's a choice. But when you don't make a definitive choice, a target, you are more susceptible to going down hard than you are if you make a choice and it's not exactly the right one, because then it gives you the opportunity to go in a different direction. How about unrealistic workloads? Some people point fingers at me like that. I'm constantly on the go. I'm teaching all over the world. I'm on the road doing the things that I love to do. But I know how to take those pieces and dampen it down. I get home at nighttime and I've worked a long time. I walk in and put my arms around my wife, and then I go into my office and I'll turn on some music or I'll lower things down, and I close my eyes for a few minutes and kind of let the world go away. I get up in the morning, and my whole platform is I talk to the boss, right? Our good Lord and I have a little conversation in the morning, and then I meditate for a while. Then I exercise a little bit. Then I start studying on something that I really am interested in, not necessarily my work. And then I'll have some breakfast, and that's how I start my day. So I take that morning piece at least about 20 minutes, 25 minutes, and I move myself into a focused pattern. And I do the same thing at night. So, look, you have to find ways of even moments, 10 minutes, 5 minutes, and there's not one of you who are listening to this that says, I can't do it. I don't have the time to do it. You know, I don't know how our president does what he does. The man is like on a machine with an unending battery, but he's mastered the ability to make sure that he has moments where, he's quiet. And those moments may be 5 minutes because he doesn't sleep much. So, how somebody like that do what he does? It's centrally focused thought process that's driven by his own philosophical base. How many of us abdicate our philosophical base? How many of us set aside and walk to the drumbeat of somebody else's parade instead of our own? And we're scattered, and we're doing it because we don't want to be thought badly of. But let me tell you something. Who cares what somebody else thinks? It's only important what you think. But you're burning your fuel consumption, and it's exponentially draining you and causing all those things that we talked about. So why don't you start with this way? I'm going to recommend a couple interesting books, but one particularly to you. It's the author is Robin Sharma. You can do it on audio, and it's called The 5 a.m. Club. And it talks about how people really balance their lives. And there's another one that I really like, and I recommend this one as well. It's called the Saint, the Surfer, and the CEO by Robin Sharma. So check it out. I think you'll find it very interesting. But I'm always trying to keep myself centrally focused. I always have a platform of who it is that I am. If you walk into my office, there's a big plaque on the wall, and it's our philosophy. It says to serve, educate, and empower individuals on their journey to achieve ultimate health. That's where I am 100% of the time. And everything that I do is either an example of that, or it's something that I'm learning to perpetuate that in somebody else's life and encourage others to make sure that it gets done. So if that's the case, that's what I do in my life. And I line everything else up. And here's an interesting story that I want to share with you that I've told several times on the platform. And it actually only goes back about 6 months ago. I was teaching at my alma mater, which is the National University of Health Sciences. And a young doctor came up afterwards and said, Doc, you really like what you do? And I said, it's been a great journey. He said, how long have you been in practice? I looked at this young resident in radiology, and I said, longer than you've been on the planet. He looked at me and says, what? I said, what are you, about 31? He said, yeah, coming up. And I said, way longer than you've been on the planet. And I just smiled at him. He said, what's the retirement plan? I said, death. And then he asked me a follow-up question. He said, don't you want to have fun? I said, I've had the privilege and the pleasure of surrounding myself with people who are similar thought. I ski, I fly airplanes, I jump out of them, I do martial arts, I scuba dive. I said, why would I ever want to change that? And he just looked at me. Because the truth of it is, when we burn out, it's because sometimes our focus is scattered, so we're depleting ourselves out of guilt or whatever it is. Secondly, we're not providing the fuel that we need to continue the journey. What would happen if you didn't put the right fuel in a car? Well, you know what? The car's not going to go too far, right? It's going to crash, it's going to burn, you're going to plug up all kinds of things. It's what you're doing to your body. But we're going to teach you how to at least biochemically balance your system. And we're going to do that on the 18th of June. So join us then. And I promise you, you're going to have some fun. I've got two great ladies that really understand the biochemical platforms. They're going to be there with me. And again, those of you who've never had the experience of, the amount of information is almost like a floodgate that opens and gives you, please join us. Register, go online, go to drtomroselle.com, go to rosellecare.com, register now, make it happen. And I promise you, it'll be an interesting evening, one that you won't forget. There's so many things that I'd love to tell you, but it has to be step by step, piece by piece. So continue to listen and share this information with as many people as you can. Because if we can change this one piece, do you know how good the world would be in how we react to each other? Do you know how we would, be able to tolerate little things that we're reactive to at this point? That's the whole purpose of this. We're going to get into a book called, Stressed Out, Headed for Burnout over the next couple of weeks. And it was written by a great doctor by the name of Evan Mladenoff. Dr. Mladenoff was the doctor for the Kansas City Chiefs, chiropractor for the Kansas City Chiefs for, I think it's about 12, 13 years. He lives in Kansas City, practices with his son. Great doc. And, he really got it. He understood the crash, if you will, when it came to when we push and we push and we push from hormonal imbalances and estrogens going down and testosterone levels non-existent and injury taking place that shouldn't have to take place, or repair of tissue that should be easy to happen and doesn't work that way. So there's a lot of different pieces of the puzzle. We're going to start stacking these things for you so you have the ability to really deal with it. So make sure you join us and make sure you register for the program coming up on the 18th of June. Simply go to drtomroselle.com or rosellecare.com. Particularly if you want to see what the Roselle Center does, go to that website and we'll make sure that we, and if you'd like to send us a note, you can do it on this program. You can do it on one of the websites. And I promise you, I will answer anything that you send out to me. Having said that, you have a great day. What I'm doing all of this for is for one thing, is for you. And simply because of the fact not only do you deserve it, but I love you all. I will see you next time. Okay, bye.